I want to talk about more than just the food here with Cracker Barrel and their CEO. Now, this was a big kerfuffle that I think is easy to dismiss as just, oh, well, people don't like the new logo or people don't like that there was, a pride flag flying on the building or something like that. And it's just one of these go woke, go broke type of situations. And we can just write it off as just one more thing. But to me, it stands as an example and not because the brand is particularly definitively American in that sense or worth defending from an inherently Catholic point of view. It's a brand. It's a chain of restaurants. Sure. But this idea, the greater cultural understanding of these, quote, woke rebrands, you can see it everywhere you look. Some people who are maybe into cars or at least were just paying attention to this when it came up may remember that Jaguar commercial with absolutely ridiculous costumes and woke imagery and stuff. This classic British car brand of luxury and distinguished, appreciation of driving machines and stuff, and then turned into this, oh, well, we're going to break the trend, break the mold. We're going to, all this progressive nonsense. This happens frequently with, I guess you can call them cultural icons, certain markers of the pop culture that's grown up over the years, and the constant attempt to subvert it, to turn it against any understanding of even the most basic traditional values. Like Cracker Barrel, old country store, makes you think of old American pioneers, and these good American homegrown values. That's the mentality put forward. That's the image that this brand used to project. And then, okay, well, we need to rebrand this, and we need to make it, progressive. We need to make it hip. We need to make it woke. We need to undermine anything even remotely old-fashioned and traditional and good about it in that sense. I think it's a very common thread, and it's good to see a CEO like this going down, but I'm concerned that she's just going to go right to another company and try it there.
Well, hopefully her record will be easy to research at this point. And so somebody wouldn't hire her. But who knows? Because the number of companies that have taken this approach is impossible to keep up with. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm reminded of the Gillette ads, with the trans child, and it's a girl who'd started taking testosterone and was there, shaving. And the what does it mean to be a man? Apparently it doesn't mean anything. That was their entire campaign. Mm-hmm. Then we had the Bud Light fiasco as well, and so you do have these. But what I am glad to see, though, is enough pushback that is generating a financial impact that is high enough in order for these companies to actually reverse course. Okay, they're not reversing course for the right reasons, let's be clear. But the very fact that there are enough people, call them a silent majority if you like, to come in and say, we're not going to give you our dollars, and in fact we're just going to mock you online mercilessly. It's a huge thing. I mean, again, we've talked about how we prefer, and it's much more effective to have top-down conversion than down-up. Yeah. But at the same time, if you can have these cultural movements that are so powerful and so economically impactful that they result in companies turning away from this stuff and being candidly afraid to engage in this kind of woke progressivism, I'm all for it. Yeah, and it's encouraging, I would say, but it's also a reminder that these uprisings of the customers, they're only happening because there is top-down, quote-unquote, conversion going on, where these CEOs are coming in. These people with, the useless degrees in gender studies and whatever, well, they're actually getting jobs, and they're getting put in charge of companies and put in charge of departments, and they're able to affect these kinds of changes. And sometimes they're in a position where they don't have to listen to the people, especially when they get into government positions, when they become heads of, the Smithsonian Institute, and they get to mock American history as they're this Smithsonian Museum of American History, and it's harder to dislodge them in that case. Here, there's basic economics at play. The shares fell dramatically. People were saying we're never going to go to Cracker Barrel again. I don't really have an interest in going to Cracker Barrel ever again. I just don't. I've been there. Right. It was fine, but I don't. And you had all these loyal customers who did love it, lashing out against it and the stock dropping. So, okay, we're going to get rid of the CEO and go back to the basics. And, the stock went up, back up 100% or whatever it was in reaction to it. when they went back to the old logo and so on and so forth. So again, these are things that in and of themselves, this is just, another brand. We're just dealing with another brand. This is not something that's integral to Western civilization and Christendom. Cracker Barrel, whether Cracker Barrel stands or falls has nothing to do with whether the West stands or falls in and of itself. But it's one more example among many of these cases where sometimes it's long-standing institutions that are not just a company. It's something. I mean, the Smithsonian Institute. That word, Smithsonian, that resonates as this is who really compiles and honors the entire history of America, plus world history, plus all these artifacts. There's a papal tiara there in the Smithsonian. There's all of these important things. Yeah. When you talk about what's the British Museum, all of these institutions that do have great cultural value, those are getting undermined in the exact same way. Again, I say Jaguar with or Jaguar with how we would say it back over in the UK, an icon of British culture. Again, it's has nothing to do with the Catholic faith in and of itself, but it's a memory of what British people were able to do, what the UK was able to do, what the West was able to do in terms of pushing forward an industry. And I
think you kind of hit the nail on the head when you said it is the memory. Yeah. And I think really that kind of is what this is. It's sort of a collective memory that we carry through intergenerationally. And it's easy for you and I, for example, to, we go to the store and we're like, okay, I'm not going to buy Budweiser, even if I did before, which I didn't. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to, eat at Cracker Barrel, which was never really my cup of tea anyway. But, like even if it was,
yes.
But then there's the thing of, but what about when you have children? Mm-hmm. What kind of society are you raising them in? And is it one that has a history? And I think that's important. That's one of the reasons that we talk about the saints in the morning, is to sort of connect people with this history of the faith. Mm-hmm. But also there's the history of a country and of a culture and of a people. Yeah. Right. And that matters too. This sense of who are we as a people, and can we see that by looking around at what ought to be cultural symbols? And so when those are eviscerated or neutralized, I think it has an effect mostly on young people who don't remember what it was like before. Mm-hmm. And that's it's almost part of the plan or part of the mission there, is so that people don't have this connection with what was before. You end up with a sort of, not to blow this up, but kind of a year zero moment that so many communists like to create. I think you do have a version of that, mm-hmm. with this attempt at rebranding of, no, we are moving forward because everything that is in the past is something that is sort of disreputable in some way. Yeah. It's something that we don't want to acknowledge. We're better now, and we're aiming towards better, more futuristic, more technological things. Yeah. And those in the past are, those who held values that we no longer agree with.
Yes, and in terms of the actual imagery at stake, here's where you can make the point, and again, it may seem facetious. Well, it's just a old country store. It's this brand of restaurants with a little store attached. What does it really mean in the long run? It has no actual cultural value to it in that way. It's just another brand. Well, they didn't really go out there and try to wokeify, if you want to say, Denny's or IHOP. They went for the story. I say they as if this was, planned by sort of a James Bond villain boardroom meeting of the communists who did this. A lot of this is just instinctive. This is just the ideology at work. This is how it works. More like a disease than any kind of general master plan from the top down in this sense. But it came for Cracker Barrel because it has this sense of American history to it, of American culture, of the old guy leaning on the barrel. It's the old general store. It has all of these historical aspects to it, and that's what they took away from the logo. That's what they wanted to downplay. That's what they wanted to change on the inside, so it didn't look like an old country store anymore. They wanted to make it bland. They wanted to make it more corporate. They wanted to make it less distinct and less culturally relevant, culturally impactful in that tiny little sense, that little aesthetic sense.